Oh, I tell you no lie. I tell you a fact. If you can consistently make wise decisions, wow, what a great life you'll have. This subject is so important that we're going to break this down into two parts, and this is part one. So let's roll. So, making wise decisions, really? Is it really that hard? Well, obviously, look around you, look around our world, and even smart people have a hard time making wise decisions. So, let's talk about that. First of all, let me give you a tip. Bear with me on this one. When your values are clear to you, making decisions becomes easier. Well, what are your values and how can you really define values? Really, basically, it's what's important to you in your life. But let's understand this. This is important. Your values must be based on your convictions, not your preferences. So what's the difference between preferences and convictions? Well, there's quite a bit. Preferences are really more maybe what you like, maybe your tastes. Like for me, example, I have a preference for Skippy peanut butter over Jif peanut butter. Yeah, I prefer Starbucks coffee over Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and I prefer to tuck my shirt in instead of tucking it out. So those are just preferences. They're really not that important. Convictions? That's another story. Convictions, they are your values. It's a sense of what you know is right and wrong. These are non-negotiable, these convictions. And if you have these, they're going to give you guidance in decision making. Here's a few examples of what I value. These are some of my convictions. I value living above reproach. And that means that everything that I do and say, I do my best to do so with integrity, to do so with honor and consistency. I value my faith. I value my family. And then you know what's something else I value? I value honoring commitments. Yeah, it's a big deal. I'll give you an example. A young friend of mine asked some of us to help him move. Well, he lived on the third floor of an apartment complex, no elevators, just small stairwells. And he asked us all to move. I said, well, we'd be happy to. So 10 of us committed to him to help him on that day. And we woke up that morning to a little bit of a surprise. Sleet, freezing rain, very cold, frigid weather. But he had to move out that day. So of those 10 that were eager to help him, 2 of us showed up. And it took us a long time, but it was worth it. I chose to show up because I wanted to honor our friendship, but I also honor commitments. And that when you make a commitment, you got to stand by that. So let me give an example of a conviction that you can relate to. It has to do with a student. It's a sense of what's right and what's wrong, but then having the courage to do something about that. This is a true story because it happened at my high school. I'm going to change the names just a little bit for privacy purposes. But here's the story. So I'm in the cafeteria and at our high school senior year, and there's a young man named Dean. Well, in Dean's group of who we had lunch with every day, they were I call them the land of the beautiful people. They were all there's a student class president, there's a senior class president, there's homecoming king, there's homecoming queen, there's all the rock stars of the school were on that's where they all sat. They're just really cool people. They weren't arrogant, they were just confident, they were accomplished, but they had a lot of things in common. Well, Dean noticed that there's a new kid on campus, and he would walk into the cafeteria, and Dean always watched him. The new boy walked in with his head down, never spoke to anybody, always went and sat by himself. And Dean's among us, he would see this. And then one day after doing this consistently and seeing this boy every day, come in with his head down, never speaking to anybody, always sitting by himself, Dean says, hey, I'll be right back. So he went over and he plopped down next to this new boy and he said, hey, My name's Dean. What's your name? Boy would not look at him. And so Dean said, well, I just want to come by and say hi to you. Hope you have a good day. Next day, the same thing happened. Boy sits all by himself. Dean says, I'll be right back. So he ran over and he plopped down and he said, hey, you probably remember my name. My name's Dean. Now, what's your name? Wouldn't look at him. Didn't say a word. Dean said, well, listen, oh man, I hope you have a good day. I just want to say hi to you. Next day, Dean says, bump back, I'm going to take my tray. So he comes over and he puts his lunch tray right next to this new boy who won't say a word, won't even look at him. Said, hey, my name's Dean, and I brought my tray, and I'm going to have lunch with you, and I might take your role unless you tell me what's your first name. Boy looked up at him and he said, my name's Charlie. And so they spent the day there talking. Next day, some of the people from the land of the beautiful people, they came with Dean, and here they all started coming over, and soon that whole lunch group has just absorbed Charlie. He became a part of them. They started planning activities, and they call up Charlie and say, hey, there's a senior dance. There's a dance after the game tonight. You want to go? I don't have a ride. We'll pick you up. Hey, Saturday, we're going to meet at 8 a.m. to start working on the float for the senior parade. You want to join us? He says, I don't have a ride. We'll pick you up. Charlie became part of this group. He started changing. The way he looked, the way he dressed. He used to be very, very unkempt, wasn't very clean, filthy hair, and he changed everything. How he thought about himself, how he interacted with people. He sat up, everything just changed about his whole personality changed. Because Charlie would go home and he was convinced now that some people really do care about him. It was a really cool story, and what happened is that then they all dispersed after graduation, going all different directions. And then many years later, Facebook arrived. And Dean said, well, this is pretty cool. I can find all my former college classmates and high school classmates. And who do you think contacts him? Yeah. Charlie sends him a message. He said, man, I've been looking all over for you, Dean. I need to talk to you. So he gave him his phone number. He said, hey, I recognize this area code, Charlie. That's my wife and I are planning to come there for an event. And so he said, well, do you have your lodging taken care of yet, Dean? Dean said, no, not yet. He said, I got you taken care of. I'm going to put you on the penthouse of a beautiful resort that I own. He said, you got your ground transportation yet, Dean? He said, nope. I'll take care of that. You'll have my personal driver for you and your wife. And he said, your personal driver? He said, yeah, I've done pretty good. So they met that evening when Dean got to Charlie's town. And they sat across from dinner. It wasn't a lunch plate, it was dinner. And Dean looked at Charlie. Charlie wasn't looking with his head down. His eyes were vibrant. He was full of life and love. And he said with incredible amount of emotion to Dean, you changed my life. You know what you really did, it wasn't that really magnanimous. It wasn't really something just incredible. But to me it was. You made me feel like somebody really loved me. And I'm eternally grateful to you, Dean. You know, that's a pretty cool story, and it's a true story. So, question I have for you, maybe there is a Charlie or a Clarissa at your school. If they sit by themselves at lunch, have the courage to say, bump that, I'm going to go sit with that person, get to know them. If you see somebody, growing up right now in school, it's just really, really tough. So you can make that easier for those people if you show courage and listen to your convictions. Okay, here's the fun part. Questions, conversation. This is what you were all hungry for as coaches, teachers, parents, to have meaningful conversations with our young sons and daughters. So this is going to be pretty obvious to you. You can share some examples in your life, be transparent. When you fail to make the right decision, what were the consequences? And share some examples with that. And of course, do the other. Well, here's where I made the right call. It is based on my values. And get your sons and daughters to open up about this. What are their values? Ooh, talk to me. Have them list what they really value in life. And that way, when these decisions come and that window opens and it closes quickly, piece of cake. I'm making the decisions based on my values. I wish you well with that.